This is just a quick description of the difference between classic Prot and Fury Prot, and how a few pieces of gear and a few numbers start to add up. So, gear threat is essentially DPS and defensive stance. So, more strength, more crit, more threat. You can start going down consumes, timing, all that. That's something else. And fundamentally, mitigation is just parry, dodge, defense, armor, shield, shield block value, and consumes and everything else. Fury Prot starts to head in towards trying to also keep max threat, but also a different type of mitigation where assume you don't have a shield on half of the time, and in that case, parry and dodge are, well, they're actually useful, whereas block percentage and block value isn't, because you don't have a shield on. And simple numbers, 20 agi base level is 1% crit, 1% dodge. So if two pieces are comparable, but one has 20 agi on, that's leaning more towards Fury Prot. You can use it in Deep Prot anyway, but we'll see a few pieces don't have any defense on them, and that's where you start to lean away from mitigation. Overall, consider sort of like a range of gear from maximum mitigation to maximum threat. Maximum mitigation is just all tank gear. If you've got T1, T2, T3, whatever, maximum mitigation is just the more def, the better. Max threat, theoretically, is just literally Bis Warrior DPS gear in defensive stance. And popping consumes at the start of a fight instead of the end of a fight, because the execute phase doesn't matter as much to you. But the opening globals and initial threat do. And then fight by fight, different raids, you sort of have 2, 3, or 4 different varying levels of mitigation, balance, high threat, max threat, and depends on the fight. So, let's look at some specifics. Helm of Might. We'll notice there's no agi in the whole Might set. Strength stam, same. So there's no actual crit. There's no agi on any of the Might gear. And we'll check out the Wrath gear. Again, there's no agi on any of them. So none of them have crit. And none of them have dodge from the agi. So you basically T1, T2, full classic def defense. BWL, when you start to look for pieces that have agi on them, Helm of Endless Rage, 26 agi, that's heaps. That's 1 and a bit crit, 1 and a bit dodge. Drake Chalm Pauldrons, 20 agi, so it's 1 and 1. Not in BWL, but Breastplate of the Chromatic, 0.5% both ways. And Chromatic Boots, 20 agi, so 1 crit, 1 dodge. So even if you had just full T1 and took Helm, DTP, and Boots, you're up 3 crit, and you're actually up 4 dodge, because DTP have 1 dodge plus the 20 agi, and that's just raw mitigation. And if you start getting a couple of other pieces, a couple of other trinkets, and leaning towards it, the difference between like a T1, T2 versus a Fury Prot from BWL gear, you can get up to like 8 to 9, maybe 10% more dodge, and more crit. Similarly, the Dark Moon Fair neck, Amulet of the Dark Moon, 19 agi, 1 crit, 1 dodge. Good stuff. We're sort of ignoring Nax gear for the moment because this is more targeted towards mid-phase. Obviously, if you go into AQ40, you see everyone in the AQ40 gear. It's practically Bis, DPS and threat. It's got all the stats. It's roughly 20 agi on every piece. Helm, shoulders, chest, legs, boots. Not exactly 20, but they've all got those stats on them. So just between those 5 pieces, you've got 5 or 6% crit, 5 or 6% dodge, just in defensive and threat-based gear. I won't talk on every piece that exists, but this is more just specifically how to view 2 pieces that you're looking at and how they compare. If we just look at the Helm of Might and Endless Rage, Might actually has 1 dodge on it already. So the main difference here is just 1 and a bit crit. It almost gets up to 1.5, but Blessing of Kings, ZG, stuff like that. So you'd say Might's totally fine. If you want the extra bit of crit, Endless Rage. Let's compare Shoulders of Might to DTP. They've got Strength Sam, bit of block, bit of def. DTP Raw, 20 agi plus a dodge. You got extra 2 dodge and 1 crit. So just the numbers they're just much higher. Sabatons of Might. Again, Chromatic have 20 agi. Dodge and a crit. It just gets higher and higher and higher. Now, a couple of the AQ 40 pieces that really start to shine. Gauntlets of Steadfast Determination. 20 agi glove. And you chuck a 15 agi on top, but ignoring chance for the moment. Now, Wrath actually has 1 parry, but no crit. Might have 1 hit, so that's actually really good. Let's compare Brutality. So notice T1, T2, just strength and stam. Brutality actually has 12 agi, so some crit and some dodge. Belt of Might has 1 dodge, very good. Wrath only has block, very good for Mitt, but Royal Karaji actually has some agi and 1 raw parry, so that's like 1.5 to 1.8 raw mitigation instead. And even your strength stam cloaks versus something like the Drape of Unyielding with Bok and a few pieces, that's half a crit, half a dodge. So it's sort of like a scale piece by piece, and then just adds up. Now, in terms of rings and trinkets, PvP, AV, hit, crit, AP, stam, all really good. Agi from Band of Vakurian 2 hit, it's huge for dodge and crit. QSR, obviously just threat, strength, stam, and whatever. When you get into BWL, a couple of pieces, the ring from Neff. There's no crit and dodge here, but the rings are sort of the easy spot to put hit into. Circlet of Applied Force is very good if you aren't hit restricted somewhere else. Obviously 22 agi, it's getting repetitive, but yeah, the numbers are there. Dragon Handbreath Cannon, actually good. You still want to stack actual AP and raw crit, but this is just comparing stats. Now, trinket-wise, Black Hands, obviously great. If it's a short fight, or if it's a fight that requires initial threat, like Veil, you go in Diamond Flask, easy. If it's a longer fight, you're starting to look at Stylenes, because if you don't have threat issues at all, you want to start leaning towards mitigation. And that's where you start thinking of the max mit, max threat range, and then which fight and which level you want to have on each of them. Also, some of the stuff like Firemaw, you do need some actual armor. And because people run in and out, and there's threat taunt, it's not really an issue. So it's a waste to walk in with Diamond Flask on that. DFT, everyone knows what that is. Now, a surprising one is Stormpike Insignia. It actually has 2% dodge on it. That's pretty good. AQ, Exalted, start working on the Bronze Dragonflight ring. 24 agi, 1 hit, stam. It's huge. You start adding all these pieces together, you end up leaning up 10 to 15 crit, 10 to 15 dodge, and that's the base of the stats for Fury Prot. Thank you.